$100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo Bay. Man, this is like ripe for Doge. Why is Doge not down there? We're spending $100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo, and we fly them down there, we keep them there a while, then we fly them back to the United States. Or we could keep them here for $165 a day. I think
this may look like a routine budget question, but it's actually a stress test of how power is exercised inside the executive branch. What's really being tested here is whether cost, legality, and congressional oversight still constrain major operational decisions. This raises broader questions about how far agencies can go before accountability mechanisms fail. In this video, we'll break down what the numbers reveal, what the law requires, and why this exchange signals something much bigger than a line item dispute.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you again, Secretary Noem, for being here. I just want to follow up briefly with Chairman Paul's questions about the cost of the wall, the billions of dollars that are going to be put forward. We do have to have accurate numbers so that we could look at that for funding it. But I would hope you also take a look at all of the cost of a wall, because there are a lot of other secondary kinds of defenses you have to put forward. I was at the wall. I've been with security folks. They tell me that a lot of the cartels have designed very sophisticated technologies to get over the wall. They're called ladders and they're called ropes. So a wall doesn't really do the job if there's not a lot of other background technologies there. So you just can't put out a cost for the wall. That's money that's not going to be as effective without everything else. So let's have a discussion about that. For the first time in U.S. history, the federal government, at the direction of President Trump, is moving immigrants apprehended and detained in the United States on civil immigration charges to Naval Station at Guantanamo Bay, which I know you're very familiar with. In March, I traveled to Guantanamo Bay with several colleagues to have a firsthand examination of the detention operations underway. And I certainly have serious concerns about the cost involved there. To date, can you tell us the total cost for detaining individuals at Guantanamo Bay?
You want the cost per individual?
Do you have that?
I do not have that with me today, sir. I can get that for you.
Well, I do have a number. Do you know how much it costs to hold an immigrant in ICE detention facility in the United States? Do you have that number?
Are you talking per day? I believe the last estimate that I got was $142 a day, around in that approximately, per day?
It's close to what I'm understanding. I understand it's $165 per day, so it's in the range. I'm still waiting for detailed financial information from this administration from my time to Guantanamo Bay. In fact, a letter with Ranking Member, or Chairman Paul and the Ranking Member together, we wanted more information on the cost there. When I was there, the 2-month cost estimate for operations was $43 million when we were down there talking to the officials there. And that does not include transportation to and from the island. We find that people are sent to the island and then they're sent back to the United States again before they're sent out. I'm not sure why we have all those costs. We have plenty of ICE facilities to keep them here. Why do you have to send them there and back? And on the day that I visited, there were 87 people in custody. And my understanding is that's a pretty normal number. At that time, at least. So my back of the napkin calculation, we're waiting for your numbers, is that it's costing about $100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo Bay. Man, this is like ripe for Doge. Why is Doge not down there? We're spending $100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo, and we fly them down there, we keep them there a while, then we fly them back to the United States. Or we could keep them here for $165 a day. I think that's kind of outrageous. So, I'm concerned by the staggering cost of this, and I would hope, Secretary, you could commit providing this committee a detailed breakdown of the total cost of that operation there. There were just a sea of empty beds. There was all sorts of security folks and nobody in those beds, which is why it's so expensive. So Chairman Paul will probably use this on his Festivus report later, I'm sure, of outrageous government spending, and I'll look forward to seeing that. Secretary Noem, are you familiar with Section 872 of the Homeland Security Act of 2002?
It sounds familiar, sir. You'll have to remind me the topic. Yes.
Well, Section 872 requires you, as Secretary, to provide a 60-day notice to Congress of any creation, deletion, consolidation, or alteration of organizations within the department that are not required in statute, which must include an explanation for the rationale behind any charges. It also prohibits you from making any changes to offices in the status. So my question for you is, why have you not provided notice to Congress of the changes you are making at the department? And will you be doing so in the near future? And will you include intended reduction in forces in that? For example, you've already terminated virtually the whole Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office staff without any communication to Congress about your intent. And the only letter yesterday claiming all of the statutory responsibilities would be met, you sent a letter, but it conflicts certainly with the whistleblower disclosure that I received last week. So please explain to the committee why you are not following this law.
Well, Senator, we are following that law. Those offices that you referenced are still open and functioning and providing their duties as required, but they have been right-sized. Many times the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, or the Ombudsman Office, which you and I visited about before, had grown quite expansive. They were used as a political tool, suing and attacking each other and censoring individuals and not doing the job for which they were created. So we've right-sized them, put them back on mission, and if there would be an instance to where notification is required, I certainly will follow that.
Time has expired. Senator Moreno.
Thank you again.
What just unfolded in that exchange was not a clash of personalities, but a collision between statutory responsibility and executive discretion. Senator Gary Peters did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The weight of the moment came from the precision of his questions and the silence that followed them. When he cited Section 872 of the Homeland Security Act, a clear written requirement for notice to Congress before structural changes inside the department, the room shifted. This was no longer about budgets or facilities. It was about process, about law, about whether the machinery of government still respects the guardrails designed to restrain it. Secretary Kristi Noem's response was measured but revealing. She acknowledged the law in principle while defending actions already taken. Offices, she said, remain open. Duties are still being performed. Staffing levels were merely right-sized. Yet the senator's concern cut deeper than staffing charts or organizational language. The issue was notice, 60 days. A mandatory pause meant to ensure that Congress, and by extension the public, is not informed after the fact, but before decisions reshape the balance of power inside a federal department. This moment matters because it exposes a familiar tension in American governance. Administrations come and go, each convinced of the urgency of its mission. Each believes that speed equals strength, but the system was not built for speed alone. It was built for accountability. Laws like Section 872 exist precisely because structural changes inside powerful agencies can have consequences far beyond a single budget cycle or political moment. They affect oversight, civil protections, and the ability of citizens to seek redress when government actions go wrong. Senator Peters tied this procedural failure to something tangible: cost. He laid out numbers not as abstractions, but as symbols of priorities. Tens of millions spent over a matter of weeks. Empty beds guarded around the clock, individuals transported back and forth at enormous expense, while domestic facilities sit ready. These are not merely accounting discrepancies. They are signals. They show where attention is focused and where scrutiny is avoided. When he asked why Congress had not received clear, detailed financial information, the question echoed beyond the room. Transparency delayed is transparency denied. And then came the heart of the confrontation. The senator pointed to the near-total termination of staff within offices meant to safeguard rights and liberties, actions taken without prior notification. He referenced conflicting accounts, official letters on one hand, disclosures on the other. This is where governance meets trust. When lawmakers receive assurances that clash with internal warnings, the integrity of the system begins to fray, not dramatically, quietly, in memos, in omissions, in footnotes that never reach daylight. Secretary Noem defended the changes as necessary corrections. Offices, she argued, had grown beyond their intended purpose. They had drifted from mission to politics. Her language was familiar, echoing a broader narrative heard across agencies and administrations: efficiency, streamlining, refocusing. But efficiency is not a substitute for legality. And mission alignment does not negate statutory obligation. The law does not ask whether a change feels justified. It asks whether Congress was told. This exchange reveals something fundamental about power in modern America. Authority often advances not through overt defiance, but through reinterpretation. Laws are acknowledged, then narrowed. Requirements are accepted, then postponed. Oversight becomes conditional, dependent on whether leadership deems it necessary. And in that gray space, accountability erodes. The senator's final question, why the law was not followed, lingered even after his time expired. The answer offered reassurance, but not resolution. If notification is required, I will follow that. The implication was subtle, but unmistakable. Compliance becomes discretionary, triggered by interpretation rather than mandate. That is not how a republic is meant to function. This is why moments like this matter, not because of partisan alignment, but because they illuminate how decisions are made when the cameras are on and how many are made when they are not. Congressional hearings are often dismissed as theater. But occasionally, the script breaks. And when it does, we glimpse the mechanics beneath the stage. We see how laws are tested, how limits are probed, and how easily process can be framed as inconvenience. The American system depends not on perfect leaders, but on enforced rules. It relies on friction, on delays, notices, and approvals to prevent concentration of unchecked authority. When those safeguards are treated as optional, the consequences do not arrive all at once. They accumulate, slowly, in budgets that balloon without explanation, in offices hollowed out without warning, in oversight that reacts instead of governs. What Senator Peters demanded was not spectacle. It was documentation. It was respect for a law written long before this administration, designed for moments exactly like this one. And what the public witnessed was a reminder that vigilance is not dramatic. It is procedural. It lives in statutes, timelines, and the insistence that power answer before it acts. In the end, this hearing was not about a single department or a single secretary. It was about whether rules still bind those entrusted to enforce them. About whether transparency is a promise or a practice. And about whether Congress will assert its role not after decisions are made, but before they reshape the system itself. Democracy does not fail in one loud moment. It weakens in quiet exceptions, in unnotified changes, in unanswered letters. In assurances that everything is functioning while foundational norms slip out of view. If you believe accountability should never be optional, if you believe laws should bind leaders as firmly as they bind citizens, then stay engaged. Support our work to expose the truth and subscribe to Liberty Report USA.